I still remember the day my world shattered. The sun was merciless that morning, beating down on our small compound in Nsukka as though it knew my fate. Mama sat on a low stool, her eyes swollen from crying, while my stepfather, Pachike, paced like a restless goat. "Esther," he said, his voice carrying the weight of finality, "you must marry Joseph. He's the only one willing to pay your bride price." I froze. Joseph? The crippled dwarf everyone mocked? The man they said carried misfortune in his shadow? I laughed bitterly, thinking it was a cruel joke. But when I saw Pachike's eyes, hard and unyielding, I realized he meant it. "Papa, please," I pleaded, my voice trembling. "I can work. I can sell fruits in the market. Don't do this to me." He wouldn't look at me. He only muttered, "A man has offered to take responsibility. Don't be ungrateful." Mama's hand touched mine gently. "My daughter," she whispered, "sometimes we don't choose our road. We only walk it." Tears burned my eyes. The thought of becoming Joseph's wife felt like death itself. He was poor, crippled, and old enough to be my father. I had seen him drag his leg through the dusty streets, children laughing behind him. I never imagined my life would be tied to his. The next day, women gathered, their faces alive with gossip. Some whispered prayers for me, others smiled in cruel amusement. "Beauty wasted," one woman muttered as they dressed me in my faded blue wrapper. My heart thudded painfully as the drums began. I felt like a prisoner walking to her own burial. When Joseph arrived, leaning on his wooden crutch, his small frame dwarfed by the crowd, silence fell. His smile was faint but genuine. "Esther," he said softly, "I promise not to hurt you." I couldn't reply. My tongue felt heavy, my heart heavier. The ceremony passed like a blur. Laughter echoed around me, but it sounded distant, hollow. I caught the mocking glances of my friends. Girls who once envied my beauty now looked at me with pity. My pride cracked like glass. When Joseph reached out his hand after the vows, I hesitated before taking it. His palm was rough but warm. That night, I sat on the edge of the bamboo bed in his small mud house. The room smelled of palm oil and wood smoke. Joseph limped toward me slowly. "You can rest, Esther," he said gently. "I won't touch you until you're ready." His kindness disarmed me, but pain still sat deep in my chest. I lay down, facing the wall, silently crying into my wrapper. As the crickets sang outside, I whispered a prayer under my breath. "God, why me?" In the darkness, I heard Joseph humming a hymn softly, his voice cracked yet calm. I didn't know then that the man I despised would one day change everything I believed about love, strength, and destiny. The next morning, the village awoke as if nothing had happened, but I could feel every whisper brushing against me like a cold wind. I walked behind Joseph to the well, my steps careful, trying not to attract attention. Every eye seemed to judge me. Mothers shook their heads, children giggled, and even my so-called friends avoided me, as if my shadow now carried a curse. Joseph moved slowly, his crutch scraping against the earth. "Don't mind them," he said quietly, glancing at me with a gentle smile. "They don't understand, but we'll manage." His words were soft, yet they carried a weight I wasn't ready to bear. I wanted to hate him, to resent him for being the cause of my humiliation, but his calm presence made my anger wobble like a flame in the wind. At the well, women whispered behind their hands. "Poor Esther, marrying that cripple," I heard one murmur. Another added, "She'll bring shame to her family." My stomach churned. I wanted to run, to disappear into the bush and never face anyone again. But Joseph waited patiently, filling our clay pots with water, humming the same hymn from the night before. He didn't seem to care about their stares, and that both irritated and confused me. When we returned home, the small mud house felt even smaller, suffocating me. I sat on the worn mat while Joseph prepared a simple breakfast of yam and palm nut soup. "Eat," he urged, placing the food before me. I refused, pushing the plate away, bitterness coating my tongue. "Why are you so patient?" I asked sharply. I am a laughingstock. You, I stopped, choking on my own words. Joseph looked at me, his eyes steady. Because being angry won't change anything, he said. I know you're hurt. I know they humiliate you, but you will survive. And so will I. I stared at him, searching for something beneath his calm exterior. Was it pride? Or maybe a hidden pain I couldn't see? He said nothing else, only waited while I finally picked up a piece of yam, pretending to eat. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the village seemed to hold its breath. I heard the familiar laughter of women mocking me, children repeating insults, but Joseph didn't react. Instead, he limped toward me and whispered, "Tomorrow we leave for the city. You'll see a world they cannot imagine." I froze. The city? I had only heard stories of Lagos and Abuja, places of bright lights and endless noise. Could he really take me there? Was it a trap? My fear mixed with curiosity, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something different in Joseph. Maybe he wasn't just a crippled dwarf as the village said. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to him than anyone realized. That night, I lay on the hard mat, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the whirlwind that had become my life. Humiliation, fear, and anger swirled within me, but beneath it all, a tiny seed of intrigue took root. Who was this man? And why did he seem unshaken by the shame that consumed me? The next morning, I packed my few belongings into a faded cloth bag, my heart thundering like a drum in my chest. The village looked the same, yet it felt like I was leaving an entire world behind. Joseph stood outside, his crutch steadying him, waiting patiently as if nothing about this journey would challenge him. I could barely look at him without a swirl of anger, fear, and a strange, unacknowledged curiosity bubbling inside me. As we walked toward the bus station, the villagers stared, their expressions a mix of amusement and disbelief. Children whispered cruel rhymes, and women shook their heads in pity. "Poor Esther," they murmured, "married to that crippled man." Each word felt like a lash across my skin, yet Joseph didn't flinch. "Ignore them," he said quietly, his voice calm. "They only see what they want to see. We have our path." On the bus, the dusty roads of our village gave way to stretches of greenery, then concrete. The city air was different, heavy with heat, noise, and a strange energy I had never experienced. I watched Joseph as he navigated through the crowded streets, his eyes alert, his body small and seemingly fragile, yet there was a confidence in him that unsettled me. I wanted to despise him, yet every subtle gesture hinted at something I couldn't name. By the time we reached Joseph's apartment, I felt both fear and awe. The building was modest from the outside, but inside, it was immaculate and surprisingly spacious. Light streamed through the large windows, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and jasmine. Joseph gestured toward the living area. "This will be our home," he said simply. "You'll rest, and tomorrow I will show you everything." I spent that night lying on the soft mattress, unable to sleep. Questions swirled relentlessly. Why is he so calm? Why does he carry himself like he belongs here? And why do I feel, I don't even know, curious, maybe even small sparks of respect? I hated myself for the thought, but it kept returning. The following morning, Joseph led me through the streets, past towering buildings, luxury cars, and bustling crowds. I felt out of place, a simple village girl in worn slippers among the chaos of the city. Then, as we entered a large office building, my breath caught in my throat. People greeted Joseph with deference, opening doors for him, bowing slightly, and calling him sir. My heart raced. Who is he? I whispered under my breath. Joseph turned to me, smiling faintly. "You'll understand soon," he said. "This city doesn't know my past, but it has seen my work. I've helped many without anyone ever knowing." I shook my head, disbelief and confusion swirling. The man I had been forced to marry, the one everyone mocked in our village, was not only respected here but clearly powerful. I felt shame prick my chest, but also a flicker of curiosity I couldn't ignore. That night, back in our apartment, I watched him carefully, trying to understand him. I had believed our marriage would be misery. Instead, I felt like I had been blind all my life, never seeing what true strength looked like. The next morning, Joseph handed me a cup of steaming tea and gestured toward the city skyline through the wide windows. "Esther," he said gently, "I want to show you something." Curiosity battled the remnants of my shame as I followed him into a sleek black car parked outside. The city streets rushed past us like a river, but Joseph seemed at ease, unfazed by the honking cars or bustling pedestrians. We arrived at a massive construction site, cranes towering like giants over half-finished buildings. Workers paused to greet him with respect, bowing slightly or raising their tools in salute. I could barely comprehend it. "Joseph, what is all this?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He smiled softly. "This is my company, Esther. I've built many of these buildings with my own hands, but few people know it's mine. I wanted to help people, to provide jobs, to lift communities." I stared stunned. The man the entire village had mocked, the crippled dwarf they said brought misfortune, was not only a billionaire but also a silent benefactor for countless families. My pride, which had felt so strong in the village, now seemed foolish and petty. I swallowed hard, feeling both awe and guilt. Why didn't anyone know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Joseph glanced at me, a small, almost sad smile on his lips. "Some things are better done quietly. Help is more meaningful when it isn't about recognition." I wanted to speak, to apologize, to say something, anything, but my tongue felt heavy. My eyes welled up, and for the first time, I realized the depth of my own prejudice and the cruelty of the village gossip I had internalized. As we toured the offices, Joseph introduced me to employees and managers. Everyone greeted him warmly, yet they looked at me curiously, sensing my confusion. "Esther," he said, pulling me aside, "you are part of this now. I want you to see not just the wealth, but the work that goes into it. It's not just buildings and money, it's hope." I nodded, my pride crumbling further with every word. That evening, back at our apartment, I could no longer ignore the thoughts swirling in my mind. I remembered the way I had mocked Joseph in my head, the way I had pitied him and felt shame at being married to him. Now, seeing the magnitude of his life and character, I felt regret pierce my chest. He had carried dignity, humility, and generosity in a world that had mocked him for being different. Joseph noticed my silence and placed his hand over mine. "Esther, you don't have to say anything yet. Just observe. Learn. And maybe forgive your own assumptions." His touch was gentle, steady, and warm. My heart raced. I didn't know whether it was shame, admiration, or something more tender stirring within me, but I knew one thing. I could no longer see Joseph as the man I had once despised. That night, I lay awake, replaying every memory of my village life, every cruel word, every laugh directed at me and Joseph. I realized that my journey was only beginning, not just to accept him, but to confront my own pride, my own biases, and the reality that life often hides miracles in the most unexpected places. The following days were a whirlwind. I had grown accustomed to the city's noise, its endless rush of people, and the constant pulse of life that never seemed to rest. Yet nothing prepared me for the way Joseph moved through it all, calm, measured, and confident. While I stumbled over my words in unfamiliar places, he navigated every street, every office, and every encounter with quiet authority. I realized that the man everyone mocked in our village had a presence that demanded respect. One afternoon, he took me to a community center his company had built. Children ran around, laughing, their uniforms clean and bright. Mothers bowed slightly as he approached, and the elders greeted him warmly. "These people, they know you?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. Joseph smiled, watching the children play. "I don't need them to know me. I just want to help. Every building, every school, every job I provide, It's for them, not for praise. I followed him through the center, my heart tight with a mixture of shame and awe. In the village, I had believed that his crippled leg and small frame meant weakness. Here, I saw that strength came in many forms: patience, humility, and quiet determination. I had been so blind, so full of pride, that I never imagined someone like him could carry such a weight of responsibility with grace. That evening, we returned to our apartment. I watched Joseph quietly reviewing papers at the desk. For the first time, I saw him as more than a man with a limp. He was someone who had endured ridicule, misunderstanding, and life's unfairness, yet he chose to be kind, generous, and patient. My resentment began to falter, replaced by an unfamiliar feeling, respect, slowly budding into something deeper. "Esther," he said, looking up from his papers, "do you understand now why I never complained about our village? I didn't need anyone's approval there. And I certainly don't need anyone's judgment to define who I am." His voice was steady, almost soothing, and I realized how small my own pride had been. I see that now," I whispered, my throat tight. Days turned into weeks, and I slowly learned to walk beside him without fear of judgment. I listened to his stories of hardship, of how he had built his empire quietly, and how he had chosen to help people who had been overlooked. I saw the love he had for humanity, for the simplest acts of care, and I felt my heart soften. I had once mocked him, pitied him, and hated my fate. Now I was beginning to understand, and perhaps even to admire him. That night, as the city lights flickered outside our window, I felt a strange mix of guilt and awe. I had been forced into this marriage, but in that coercion lay a revelation I could never have imagined. Joseph, the man everyone called a cripple, had taught me the meaning of strength, patience, and humility. And deep down I feared, yet hoped, that my heart might slowly learn to love him. It had been nearly a month since I left the village, but memories of home clung to me like stubborn shadows. The ridicule, the whispers, the scornful laughter, they haunted my thoughts at the oddest times. Even in the luxury of Joseph's world, I felt small and foolish, ashamed of the pride and vanity that had blinded me. One evening, I finally voiced it aloud. "Joseph, do you ever think about the village?" My voice trembled as I spoke, afraid of the answer. He looked up from his papers, a faint smile on his lips. "Of course," he said softly, "but I don't let it define me. People will always see what they want to see. They will judge, mock, and gossip. What matters is how we choose to respond." I stared at him, the truth in his words cutting through me like a sharp blade. "I was so proud," I admitted, tears threatening to spill. "I thought marrying you was the worst thing that could happen to me. I mocked you in my head, feared you, hated my fate." My voice faltered, and I couldn't look him in the eye. Joseph set down his pen and moved closer, limping slightly, but his presence filled the room with calm. "Esther," he said gently, "what matters is that you're learning. That's what makes life different from rumor and gossip: growth. You can't change the past, but you can choose how to live in the present." I nodded, swallowing hard. I wanted to be proud, to reclaim some dignity, yet I realized true strength was in humility, not in anger or bitterness. I had been forced to marry him, yes, but perhaps life had placed me here not as punishment, but as a lesson. A lesson I was finally beginning to understand. The next morning, Joseph suggested we visit my parents, not the compound, but the streets of the village, where his generosity had quietly changed lives. I resisted at first, fear knotting my stomach. What if they laugh again? What if they don't accept us? I asked, voice shaking. "They might," Joseph admitted, "but seeing the truth often silences the loudest voices. You've seen my work here, Esther. Now you'll see its effect where you grew up." When we arrived, my heart thumped painfully. Women stared, mouths agape. Children paused mid-chase, wide-eyed. And then, slowly, people began to recognize the man I had been forced to marry, not as the crippled dwarf of rumor, but as a benefactor, a man who had secretly built schools, dug wells, and provided livelihoods for the very community that had scorned me. Mothers approached, offering gratitude and apologies. "Thank you, Joseph," one woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done more for our children than anyone ever imagined." I felt my own shame and pride collide. I had once feared him, mocked him, and now I realized that he was everything I had once wished I could be: strong, kind, and generous in ways I had never known. That night, back in the city, I lay beside Joseph, heart heavy with shame yet lighter with newfound understanding. I had been forced to marry him, but life had given me more than I deserved. A man who carried dignity, wisdom, and love even in the face of cruelty. And somewhere deep inside, I knew my feelings were beginning to change, though I didn't dare admit it aloud. It was impossible to ignore the shift within me. Each day I spent with Joseph, I discovered pieces of him I had never imagined. The strength behind his small frame, the quiet courage in his voice, the patience with which he treated everyone, even those who had mocked him, stirred feelings I had tried desperately to suppress. I hated myself for it, yet I couldn't deny the warmth that grew in my chest when he smiled at me. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Joseph and I walked along a quiet street, the air filled with the scent of roasted corn from a nearby vendor. "Esther," he said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I know this journey has been hard for you. I can see your pride, your fear, even your anger. But I also see your heart beginning to understand." I looked down at my hands, trembling slightly. "I don't know what to feel," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I hated you once, and now I don't know." Joseph stopped and turned toward me, his small frame silhouetted against the fading light. "It's all right," he said gently. "Feelings take time. No one can force them, not even life itself. What matters is that your heart is open, even a little. That is enough." His words washed over me like a gentle river, carrying away some of my shame and replacing it with a strange, tender curiosity. As days passed, I found myself seeking his company, noticing the little things. The way he listened carefully, the way he smiled when he thought no one was watching, the way his eyes crinkled with genuine laughter. My heart began to respond in ways I had not anticipated. The man I once feared and despised now seemed essential to my very being. And yet, guilt gnawed at me. How could I allow myself to feel this way after all I had thought of him? One afternoon, Joseph invited me to a small charity event his company organized for underprivileged children. Watching him interact with the kids, giving them attention, laughter, and encouragement, I felt my heart swell. "He is extraordinary," I whispered to myself. "How can someone so small, so mocked, carry so much goodness?" That night, as we returned to our apartment, I lingered in the doorway, hesitant to step inside. Joseph noticed and tilted his head, a faint smile on his lips. "Esther," he asked softly, "is something troubling you?" I shook my head, ashamed. "I'm beginning to see you in a way I never imagined." His hand reached for mine, gentle and steady. I didn't pull away. Lying in bed that night, I felt an unfamiliar warmth in my chest. It was more than admiration. It was the first gentle stirrings of love, cautious and hesitant, yet undeniable. I closed my eyes, listening to Joseph's quiet breathing beside me, and for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a life with him, not one of fear and shame, but of understanding, respect, and perhaps, one day, love. I realized then that marriage, forced as it had been, had led me to something far greater than I could have imagined. The man everyone in my village had scorned was teaching me what it meant to see beyond appearances, to value character over wealth, to embrace humility and courage. And slowly, I began to wonder if I had been given a gift far more precious than I had ever expected. Even in the city, the village seemed to follow me. Messages from neighbors, the occasional whispers from family, and memories of laughter aimed at my misfortune haunted my thoughts. I tried to focus on Joseph, on his kindness, his quiet strength, yet every reminder of home stirred fear and shame. Could I ever reconcile the girl I was in that village with the woman I was becoming beside him? One afternoon, as Joseph reviewed plans at his office, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my cousin. "We hear about your husband, that crippled man. Is it true? People say he's a billionaire now. Are you laughing at us?" My chest tightened, and I read it again, disbelief giving way to embarrassment. Joseph noticed my tension. "Esther," he said softly, placing a hand on mine, "you cannot carry their judgment. Their ignorance cannot define us." I looked up at him, the frustration in my chest clashing with the warmth I felt in his presence. "But what if they never accept me? What if they only remember the shame I felt marrying you?" I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. Joseph's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Then let them remember what they will. Our life is ours, not theirs. And the truth has a way of silencing even the loudest voices." Later that evening, we decided to take a short trip back to the village, not for pride, but to see the changes Joseph had quietly brought. Schools he had rebuilt stood proudly, clean water wells gushed life into dusty courtyards, and families once struggling were thriving. I saw mothers and children who bowed and smiled not out of fear, but out of genuine gratitude. The sight shook me. The very village that had mocked us now bore witness to his generosity. A small group of women approached me hesitantly. "We were wrong," one stammered. "We laughed, but your husband, he has helped us. He has changed everything." My throat tightened. I wanted to speak, to explain my own shame, my own ignorance, but I couldn't find the words. Joseph's hand found mine under my wrapper, a quiet anchor of reassurance. That night, back in our city apartment, I lay awake thinking about the day. Pride, regret, and admiration twisted together inside me. I realized that love could not grow without understanding, and understanding could not exist without seeing truth beyond appearances. Joseph had taught me patience, humility, and compassion, lessons I had never expected to learn from a man I once feared and despised. As I drifted into sleep, I felt the faintest stirrings of hope in my heart. I could no longer imagine life without him, not just because he had wealth or power, but because he had taught me to see the world differently, to see him, and perhaps myself, in ways I had never imagined. By now, I could no longer deny the change within me. Every day with Joseph revealed layers of kindness, intelligence, and quiet strength that left me both humbled and amazed. I had begun to admire him, to respect him, and though I scarcely admitted it to myself, the first tendrils of love were quietly taking root. But even as I felt warmth toward him, a shadow of doubt lingered, fear that my past pride and the village's judgment would always follow me. One evening, Joseph suggested a walk along the river that ran through the city. The sun set in a blaze of gold and orange, reflecting in the water like molten fire. "Esther," he said softly, "do you feel different than the girl who left the village?" I hesitated, my throat tight. "Yes and no," I admitted. "I've learned to respect you, to see your strength, but sometimes I still feel ashamed of myself, ashamed of what people thought of me." Joseph took my hand gently, his small fingers warm against mine. "Shame is only powerful when you let it control you," he said. "You cannot erase the past, but you can choose how it shapes your future. I married you not for what others thought, not for appearances, but because I see you, truly see you. You have nothing to prove to anyone." His words pierced through the lingering fear in my heart. I looked up at him, really looked, and saw a man who had endured ridicule, who had lived with a body that many judged, yet who carried himself with unwavering dignity. The realization struck me. This was a man who deserved more than pity or mockery. He deserved love, trust, and devotion. "I think I'm beginning to understand," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I've hated myself for judging you, for letting my pride blind me. And now, I think I'm starting to love you." Joseph's eyes softened, and a rare, full smile spread across his face. "Then let it grow, Esther. Let it grow freely without fear. We have the rest of our lives to discover it together." For the first time, I felt a lightness I had never known. The anger, fear, and shame that had gripped me for so long began to dissolve. I realized that life had given me an unexpected gift. A man I had once scorned, who had shown me patience, strength, and love even when I had been undeserving. That night, as we lay together in the quiet of our apartment, I felt a deep sense of peace. I could no longer imagine returning to the girl I had been in the village, prideful, narrow-minded, and frightened. The woman I was becoming beside Joseph was stronger, wiser, and open to love in ways I had never dreamed possible. I closed my eyes, listening to his breathing, and allowed myself to imagine a future that once seemed impossible. A life not defined by shame or fear, but by understanding, respect, and the quiet, steady bloom of love. The morning sun spilled golden light across our apartment, and for the first time, I felt at home, not just in the city, but in life itself. Joseph moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing breakfast as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I watched him from the doorway, my heart swelling with admiration and something far deeper, something I could finally admit: love. "Esther," he said, turning to smile at me, "come eat before it gets cold." I walked over, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sunlight. "I've been thinking," I began hesitantly, "about the village, about us, and about myself. I see now that I wasted so much time judging you, fearing my fate, and letting shame control me." Joseph's expression softened. He reached for my hand, his small fingers intertwining with mine. "And now?" he asked gently. "Now," I said, my voice trembling but steady, "I see everything clearly. I see your strength, your kindness, your heart. I love you, Joseph. Not because of your wealth, not because of what people once said, but because of who you are. Every part of you, even the parts the world tried to mock, makes me want to be better, to see life differently." He smiled, a mixture of relief and quiet joy lighting his face. "Esther, you have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that. I never wanted your love out of fear, pity, or obligation. I wanted it to grow freely, from understanding and respect. And now it has." We sat together, hands clasped, letting the morning sunlight fill the room. For the first time, I truly felt that our marriage, once forced and filled with shame, had transformed into something powerful and real. I no longer felt the weight of the village's judgment or my own pride. All that mattered was Joseph and the life we were building together. In the days that followed, I visited our village again, but this time with confidence. I walked through the streets, past familiar faces, holding Joseph's hand proudly. Children ran up to greet him, mothers offered thanks, and elders nodded with respect. The whispers of mockery had vanished, replaced with admiration. And I walked beside Joseph with my head held high, not out of pride, but because I had learned to value truth, kindness, and love above all else. One evening, as we watched the sun dip behind the hills from our apartment balcony, Joseph turned to me. "Esther," he said softly, "life has a way of hiding its greatest blessings in places we least expect. You and I, we are living proof." I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath mine. "Yes," I whispered, "and I will never take it for granted. You've taught me to see beyond appearances, to love without fear, and to embrace life fully. I am grateful, endlessly grateful." Joseph kissed the top of my head gently. "And I am grateful for you, Esther. For your heart, your courage, and your willingness to grow. Together, we can face anything." As the city lights twinkled below us, I realized that life had given me the most extraordinary gift. A love that transcended shame, prejudice, and fear. A love that had been waiting all along in the heart of a man everyone had once underestimated. And in Joseph's arms, I finally understood what it meant to truly see and truly love another human being. Please, kindly hit the subscribe button, like this video and share. This means a lot to us. Thank you for watching.